Hi, my name's Mark Hodgson, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the latest edition of the Sky Careers podcast. And my guest today, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, is Scott McCue. Now, Scott is a licensed aircraft maintenance engineer, or a LAME. He works for the mighty Qantas, the Flying Kangaroo, based in Perth, and he's been doing this for quite a while. We've just been chatting before we came on for 36 years. So, Scott, I think you've got a bit you can tell us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark.
You're super welcome. We always like to start right back at the beginning, and for you, that's a little while ago, Scott. So, tell us about your early years, where you went to school, and maybe a little bit about what you studied and your favourite subjects.
Okay, so I'm originally from Sydney, and that's where I went to school. And my high schooling was in a school called Janelli Boys High School. And from there, I just had a real interest in all the industrial arts, metalwork, woodwork, and so on. They were probably my favourites. I didn't mind a bit of science and geography. And the math was difficult, and one way I hated it, but it also intrigued me about how metrics and math was very precise, which is a little bit like engineering. There's no grey areas. It's either right or wrong, yes or no, black or white. So the math it intrigued me as much as it tormented me as well. And then I just really had an interest in Dad's lawnmower and when it wouldn't start and troubleshooting it and things like that. I just loved machinery. I love to fix my bicycle and just changing tyres and things like that. Again, also, and bearings were flogged out in it just to work out what was going on and to just be around the garage and around the shed experimenting with the toolkit, not necessarily being great on the tools, but it was just good to have them in my hands and to be just playing around with it. That's really where my curiosity about engineering and mechanics and nuts and bolts came from.
Awesome. So sound like you're a young man who walked around with a bit of oil and stuff under your fingernails.
Yes, definitely. And I think yes, where my curiosity really came from was where we lived in Sydney. There was the main road to get. Well, I lived in southern Sydney, and to get to the city, the main road sort of went round the perimeter of the Sydney airport. And at times when we would be out at some special occasion in the city, when we'd come back around the airport, I'd always ask Mum and Dad if we could stop the car. And it was brilliant because right where the aircraft came over, on their final approach before they touched down, they went right above the roadway. And we weren't supposed to stop there, but Dad would just stop for a minute or two. And a couple of times we timed it perfectly that a 747 was coming in, and there's 4 engines roaring, and you could look up. Quite often it was at night time, and they had the landing lights on, and all the landing gear were down. It was just so dynamic and a really spectacular and exciting. There was so much energy involved, and that just really sparked my curiosity about what's going on inside those engines and how do those engines propel the aircraft, and all that landing gear, how it retracts and disappears inside the aircraft after they take off, and then it comes down again for landing, and the wing as well, like how does the aeroplane fly? That was still all those things were a real mystery to me, and it's really where my thoughts about being a mechanic or engineer and came from, was some of that childhood dreaming and a sense of wonder, really.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And what was your pathway? What did you do next to go from, I guess, school into ultimately joining aviation?
Right. So in high school, it was kind of similar, but things have changed a little bit now. It was 6 years of high school if you're going to do your high school certificate and go on to uni, and it was I think it was called a TER or something, the tertiary entrance score then. It was out of 500 in New South Wales back then, and I had zero interest really in going to university. I was really more of an athlete at school. I wasn't so much of an academic, and I really didn't enjoy school that much either. But what I did know was that I really didn't want to be inside an office and four walls for the rest of my working life and my career. It had to be something outdoors. And I considered motor mechanic and some of the other motor trades and things like diesel fitter, things like that. And uh, then it was actually a good friend of mine at school. His older brother had done the aircraft maintenance engineering at Qantas, and I got speaking to him, and I just went, "Oh, I think now I might have found my niche, what I'm really looking for." And so that's when my whole dream about getting into aviation and as an engineer began from there, and off it went.
And so, what was the gap? What was the leap from I guess from your study to actually your first job in aviation?
Okay, so when I got to 16 in year 10, so that was after doing 4 years of high school, that's when you can leave. And in that era, I know there's now WACE where you can, they're encouraging people to stay on and do the full high school 6 years, but it's designed for people like me that have no real intention of going to university. Most of the people that were going to get a trade, because what I do, aircraft maintenance engineering, it is a trade. It's not a degree at university. So you go to a technical college. So most of the plumbers, carpenters, and so on, motor mechanics would all leave school in year 10 and not do their higher school certificate. I could have done that and attempted to join if I wanted to, but I just felt like a couple of things. I just felt too young to be leaving school and going into the workforce. And the second thing was I thought you only get one chance at high school. I'm never coming back to have this opportunity ever again. So I felt it would be best use of my time for only 2 years because you're out of school for a long time, the rest of your life, basically. So in the big scheme of things, over a lifetime, 2 extra years at school was not a big commitment. So I stayed on and did my HSC, did those higher levels of science, math, and English, which incidentally, that did help me a lot in my career, is having that higher level of math, even though technically I didn't really need it. So that was very helpful by default. Then did some work experience in year 10, some work experience in year 11, was not able to get work experience in aviation, but did a variety of different things. Some of my work experience was even just to work out what I did not want to do when I left school. And so by about the start of year 12, I was making serious inquiries on how to become an aircraft maintenance engineer and the difference between licensed aircraft maintenance engineer and aircraft maintenance engineer, the pathway, and it was an apprenticeship. And so towards the end of, it was about halfway through, I think, or towards the end of year 12, I actually, and this is a really good lesson for people, right? Because this is before the digital age, this is before the internet. And I know that's hard for younger people to imagine, but our ways of communication, there wasn't even email, it was just a telephone or going and knocking on a door. So I very boldly said to my mum and dad, I'm going to drive because I was driving at this stage. I'd already had casual jobs when I was in school, bought my own car. I drove down to the jet base at Mascot in Sydney and just knocked on the door, and well, really, this is a story in itself, actually. I got onto the jet base illegally because I just parked my car in the car park, and because you've got to imagine this jet base is like a small city, and I was parked way, way in the visitors area from the actual main gate. As I approached the main gate, I got talking to this guy who looked like one of the engineers, and long story short, he scanned me through the gate on his ID electronically, which is totally illegal. He shouldn't have done that. So instead of going to the main security gate, he just fast-tracked me through and said, yeah, that's the apprentice training area in there. Go and talk to them. So I knocked on the door and they sat me down and introduced myself, and they gave me all the brochures and told me all got the full bottle on how to become an apprentice and so on, which was fantastic. And they told me when they would be advertising, when the advertisement would come out in the newspaper and so on, keep an eye on the newspaper of how to apply. And then right at the end, they said, oh, and by the way, how did you get in here? And so I don't know what happened to that guy. He probably just got a rap over the knuckles. But the lesson in that is going and knocking on doors and speaking to people face to face, so you build connection. What's so missing today is people tell me, and during COVID I found this, I got stood down for months on end because aviation got devastated by COVID, and I had to go and find another job essentially. And I had a truck driving license which I got many years ago, but applying online, because I had no experience, and I'm getting processed through an algorithm. So just like you and I talking now, that was not part of the picture. And if the algorithm doesn't like you on your electronic application, it spits you out before you even get anywhere near a human, which is really unfair and unfortunate. And I really feel for everybody. And so if you're leaving school now or trying to get into an aviation career, um, you could find yourself in that same scenario. So I really can't overemphasize enough the power of connection and meeting people, talking to people, putting yourself out there. It's very bold. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but hey, sitting at home on your couch, comfortable, nothing extraordinary or great really happens in your life. It's when you get out of your comfort zone and get out there in the wide world that really extraordinary things happen. And that's could have been the difference between me being in aviation and not, was that decision of myself to be bold enough as a 18-year-old, 17-year-old, whatever I was, to just go on down to the jet base and knock on doors and start asking questions.
Yeah, I love that answer, Scott, and you're so correct. I think we're of a similar vintage, and it's the irony now is that in a world that is theoretically everyone's connected via texts and online and digital and websites and AI and all those things, we've never been more disconnected. And I think, as you say, yeah, the old analog skills of picking up a telephone, or even better, just going knocking on a door and shaking someone's hand and introducing yourself, is so powerful in actually getting on in life generally, but specifically in aviation, because a lot of the conversations we've had on the Sky Careers podcast, we hear a lot about this because a lot of roles there are a lot of roles in aviation. There's a broad range, as you would know, but finding that first step is not necessarily that easy, and there can, depending on exactly where we're talking about, there can be a lot of competition. And just having a piece of paper or a qualification or a flying or a flying license or something isn't enough necessarily to get you in. Once you get in, it's different, but to get that first step. So I love that
Yes.
story about you knocking on the door all those years ago as a fresh-faced 18-year-old in the mascot jet base. You probably wouldn't get close to it today. The fences are probably
No.
7 times higher today, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's all locked up, and there's multiple security entry points actually to get through to where you need to go to now. Yeah, that just can't happen.
I love that. So you joined. So you did your apprenticeship. Did that take you straight into Qantas, or was it a Qantas sponsored apprenticeship, or how did that
Yes,
piece work?
yeah, correct. So I was keeping my eye on the newspaper. I saw the call for applications for apprenticeships come out. So I applied and I went through the interviewing process. I think there was a couple of interviews. Ultimately, I got accepted into the apprenticeship uh, scheme, and that's a 4-year apprenticeship. And so at that was the first year of the training school at Alexandria. So we all got given our start date, and I got down there to the training school, and I did my first year there in the training school, which was a lot of theory and practical as well. I had a really big practical workshop down there with smaller aeroplanes in there, so we could actually start playing with aircraft, get hands on. And then for second year, we went out to the jet base, and every 3 months we would change to a different section, and we would do a workshop section and then an aircraft hangar section, just alternating 3 months at a time. And that went on for second year and third year. And also from second year, we started going to a TAFE college. So that was Padstow TAFE in New South Wales. They were the aviation aircraft maintenance engineering allocated TAFE. And so we would do 1 week every month out at the TAFE college. So it'd be 3 weeks at the jet base and then 1 week at the TAFE college. And then at the end of the third year, we got to make a selection of where we would like to spend all our fourth year. And you make like a 1, 2, 3 hierarchy, and they endeavoured the apprentice training centre to try and give you your first pick, which I got, which was the heavy maintenance, and that's where in the hangars where we were getting 747s and completely doing a D check. That's the heaviest check they do on aircraft, which they do every 10 to 15 years. So we were completely stripping the aircraft apart, like the whole interior stripped out, all 4 engines off, all 5 undercarriage removed, inspections of all the fuselage, and then all put back together, all tested, and then it flies again, the aircraft. So I deliberately chose that section because that's where I was going to get the most experience on all the systems and the aircraft and really seeing the nitty-gritty and how everything worked. And then ultimately I moved to a couple of other sections after that. We may be able to come to that later on. But I currently work in line maintenance here in Perth Airport.
So before we get to today, so how, I mean, there's a little twinkle in your eye and a sense of excitement in your voice as you relate it. Was that 4 year, I guess, when you really you earned your spurs, as it were? Was that hard? Did you find that piece easy or enjoyable? How was that 4 years for you?
The 4 years was great. It was a little bit of all those things you just mentioned. It was hard. It was tiring. I was doing shift work for the first time in my life, which involved some night shifts, day shifts, afternoon shifts, weekend work. There was that adaptation. And then the people side of it as well. We're probably going to see the people theme recur throughout our talk here. The changing section every 3 months meant that you were having to get to know a new crew of people every 3 months, a new section, a new senior engineer, a new duty maintenance manager, a new supervisor, and also all the colleagues that you are working with, the tradespeople, rubbing shoulders with them and getting to know the intricacies of each personality type. That was a challenge in itself, was just the people. Just put the aircraft and the engineering side of it aside. That was a whole thing in itself, obviously, because that's what I was primarily there for, to learn that. And I was learning that, and that was fantastic. But then there was this other element that I didn't really consider too much before I was in that environment of then having to learn the people. And just by the time you worked that out over the first few weeks, you were then working with them for 6 to 8 weeks, and there were some weeks you were going to TAFE and so on, so you weren't there. And then before you knew it, 3 months was over, and then it's rinse and repeat. You're going to a new section, new faces, new people, new aircraft as well in terms of what they were doing with either components off the aircraft, engines, gas turbine engines, overhauling undercarriage or components, or you're in a live aircraft section where you're actually working live on the aircraft. So it was great. Some of it was tedious because a lot of the work that you're doing as an apprentice, because you really don't know a lot, there's a lot of the just undoing screw after screw after screw after screw, like hundreds, sometimes even thousands of screws in a shift is all you're doing. But
Yeah.
this is the important bit, is when you see one of the tradesmen that you've got to know quite well doing something more technical, while you're doing your screws, just have a look over his shoulder and see what he's doing. And that way, like, looking is a very powerful tool in that industry. To, seeing is believing, and you can learn a lot just by the powers of observation of what the other more experienced people around you are doing.
That's fantastic. So once you were qualified at the end of that 4 years, give us a whistle stop tour of I guess the next 30 years, because you've been in Qantas for 36 years.
Yes.
Where where
So
where where did being a layman in Qantas take you? Obviously took you from the east coast to the west coast, but I'm guessing a few other places on the way.
Yeah, it's definitely 100%. It's taken me a lot of places around Australia and the world, actually, but we'll get to a little bit of that. Initially, when you come out of your apprenticeship, you're an AME, so you are an aircraft maintenance engineer. So you can then be assigned a job by a senior engineer or a licensed engineer, and then it's up to them to decide how much observation they need, or how much um, direction and being there overseeing what you're doing is required. When you're straight out of your apprenticeship, you need a lot of it. But if you've been an AME for 5 years, 10 years, you probably don't need a lot of okay, is that better?
That's better.
Yeah,
That's better.
sorry, I'd accidentally muted myself. So I just backtrack a little bit. As an AME after your apprenticeship, you then do 11 exams that are Civil Aviation Safety Authority exams to be as a prerequisite to then become a licensed aircraft maintenance engineer. And then you need also then it's several thousand hours of experience on a particular aircraft type. And then you can then sit what they call a type course. So my first type course was the Boeing 747-400. Qantas then put me on a type course for 3 months where you study that aircraft full time for 3 months and you do 12 exams there in the training school. So one exam you study for a week and then you do an exam at the end of the week, all 75% pass marks for CASA and for Qantas on the type course. And then once I had passed all those exams, I then applied to CASA for my first license, and then you become a licensed aircraft maintenance engineer. And then that just repeats, not the 11 exams. Once you've done the prerequisites, they're done. But then when Qantas then wanted to put me on another type course, I think my next one was the Boeing 767. So you're doing the airframe and the engines on that airframe. And then I got the Airbus A330 and then the Boeing 737. So they're the four types that I currently hold, those four airframes and all the different engine types that are on those aircraft. And
Wow.
oh,
It
and so
sounds like
that's
it sounds like quite a lot of study.
it is a lot of study. Yes, they say that it's about the equivalent of doing a degree at a university for whatever you're studying to in whatever profession at the end of the day. And now that I've done it, like some of these exams, like on the aircraft lights, for example, just to this is just you study every single light that's on a 747. It's 1,000 pages is the book. 1,000 A4 pages you have to study to understand every single light on a 747. And at the end of the week, there's an exam on all those lights, and you've got to get a 75% pass mark on all that. And then at the end of that week, you have the weekend off, and then you're into another 500 to 1,000 pages on another area of the aircraft. It's intense. And it's once you understand the systems, they're not too bad, but the volume is the most overwhelming thing in this career path. It's the volume of information.
Yeah. So bring us fast forward, Scott. We could talk for hours. We might have to have you back for another one because
Sure, we can
there's
do that.
there's so much to cover. But bringing us forward to today, and it's 30 plus years at Qantas. Tell us what you do today.
All right, so what I do today is I'm at the Perth airport here. So all the Qantas aircraft that are coming and going, every time that aircraft lands, there's a minimum inspection that has to be done by someone like me. And so that aircraft turns up domestically, they're all about a 60-minute turnaround time. So from the time the aircraft stops to the time it's rolling out again, you've only got 60 minutes. So in that time, you have to do that walk around inspection downstairs, looking at everything, looking for any obvious discrepancies. Then you go upstairs and I interrogate the aircraft because all aircraft are digital, they self-monitor now. So I have to see if the aircraft has picked up anything that it feels is wrong with it. There's two logbooks. There's a logbook from the flight crew and the cabin crew. So they write up any defects that they might have had on the trip from wherever they've come to Perth, and I have to address those. Address anything that the aircraft says it's wrong with it. Then we have to fuel the aircraft, and I have to oversee that and report all the figures to the captain so that they can cross-check, make sure they've got the correct amount of fuel they need for the next sector. And then at the end of it, walking around the aircraft, all the doors, everything that was opened or touched during this current ground time, I have to confirm that it's all up, all closed and fit to fly again. And then there's also, you can probably imagine, a whole heap of paperwork and compliance that I have to do also every single time that aircraft lands before it takes off again. And those logbooks that the flight crew and the cabin crew have at the end, when they've all those defects in there have been addressed, is what they call a CRS, or a certificate of return to service. So every single time that aircraft lands, a lamey like myself has to then certify that CRS, and I'm legally saying that that aircraft now is fit to fly again. So every time the aircraft lands, that CRS basically expires for that the previous lamey did. And whilst it's on the ground, the maintenance happens, the servicing happens, and then at the end of that ground time, I'm certifying a fresh CRS to say this aircraft is now fit to fly again. There's a lot of regulation and compliance in this industry.
Yeah, we've covered that. It might bring us on to the next question, which is what part of your job do you enjoy the most?
Oh, all right. So here's the people theme coming again. I think the liaising with the flight crew, the cabin crew, and just there's a lot of collaboration built in now too. Instead of it being very singular, like the pilot's just flying the plane, me just fixing it, the flight attendants just doing their part. There's a lot of working together more so now than when I first started in my career. It was very uh, singular before. Now it's a lot of everyone helping each other, working together to get a better outcome, a faster outcome. Things are just more efficient, and it's just a nicer place to work as well. So I think talking to the pilots and the flight attendants about their issues when the aircraft lands, and it gives me a much better idea when instead of me just reading a short summary of the defect, if I can talk to them directly, I can get a lot more information in a much faster amount of time about the exact nature of the defect, and it gives me lets me focus in a lot quicker on what I actually
Yeah,
need to do
yeah,
to resolve the situation and the defect and to get the aircraft going again. So probably the people, and then when you do have a defect, if you can fix it quickly in that 60 minutes, seeing the aircraft come in broken somewhat, and then being able to quickly do something, change something, reset something, and then get it serviceable again, and then see the aeroplane leave is also probably that would be the two most satisfying parts of my job.
yeah. I think I know I've sat on a lot of airplanes in a lot of parts of the world, and seeing a U person walk in and having everything cross up. We've got a slight engineering problem. You're going, please,
Yes,
please,
yes,
please be able to fix it. And we've sent lots of love your way. And if you walk
yes.
off and say
Thank
no
you.
good,
Yes, yeah.
and the corresponding question, of course, what's the least favourite part of your job, Scott?
Ooh, okay. Probably the one thing that if I could change and eliminate from my workplace, that, and it's quite simple and straightforward, that would be the rain. I hate the rain. So when I'm outdoors, because it's a very outdoor orientated job, uh, if it's, I look just to sort of paint the picture. Look, it's not the rain itself. But when I have to be out there, I've got a full rain pants, rain jacket, hood. It's like stormproof. It's all sealed up so that I stay dry. But I'm carrying my own phone. I'm carrying a mini iPad. I'm carrying a two-way radio. I've got a notepad and pen. These things are used constantly in my job, and also rain will destroy those things very quickly. So keeping them dry means that they have to be on the inside of that raincoat or protected somehow, and constantly undoing getting access to it. And I don't know, the rain just makes everything so much more difficult to do and slows things down. It's just really annoying. So if I could rid my workplace of that annoyance, it would be really good. But thankfully here in Perth, it's only an annoyance for about 2 or 3 months of the year. The rest of the year is quite dry here, so it's just a narrow season where I just grin and bear it and get over it, and then it's happy days again.
I was going to say you're probably in the right place. And by the way, that's a very original answer. That's the first time I've had rain as the answer to that question.
Okay.
Usually, most people say paperwork. So
Okay.
rain's a winner. And just to help us land the plane on the podcast, pun intended. What do you do when you're not at work, Scott?
Well, okay. So this is yeah, this is far reaching. This, yeah, I have a very a vast range of interests and hobbies, but that could be anything from riding my bicycle. I'm a really keen cyclist, and going to the gym. I've got a jet ski, so I love getting out on the river on the jet ski, and still skateboard a little bit. I've love motorbikes. Two wheels is a real passion of mine. So I get out riding, and I used to race motorcycles, and yeah, I think that's really what I really like to do, and just a little bit of down the beach and rest and relaxation and getting amongst nature, because I work in a concrete and steel jungle essentially. I find it really therapeutic to get up in the hills and go for a bicycle ride in the hills, or just go down to the local park and eat lunch, or just relax, or go for a stroll around the park and get some nature and some greenery and hear the birds sing and so on.
Love it. Yeah, opposites are great, aren't they? And then
They are.
the last question, Scott, and you've been a fabulous guest. Really enjoyed having a chat with you. Um, what advice would you give to, I guess, a 16-year-old version of Scott, but more broadly to other young men and women looking for a career in aviation, not just in the engineering space, but in other spaces? You've obviously been across the industry, seen a lot of it across many years. What advice would you give to other young people thinking about, or maybe not even sure about whether aviation could be for them? What would you say to them?
Right. So the thing that's changed massively from when I was their age is the internet and the digital age. It's like the internet is just your encyclopedia on steroids. There's so much information out there. Is that that's a really good resource, but I don't have to tell most young people about that, because they've just grown up with it and that's second nature. The thing that I think would possibly go hand in hand with that, and more importantly and timely now, is getting your hands on the whatever part of the industry is you want to do. For example, for myself, it's getting into the shed or the garage and having a bit of a play with the tools and getting those hand skills. Everyone's got the keyboard and the paperwork side of skills and the where to find things digitally now. That's just second nature. What is a challenge for some people, just because of they've not had access to it. Everyone starts the same, of not knowing which end of the hammer to use. But the sooner you can get your hands on the actual tools and picking them up, and some nails and hammers and hammering the two bits of wood together, you don't even have to make anything. But just that process of swinging the hammer and hitting the head of the nail and not your thumb, that's just step one, like the real basics. And just surrounding yourself, like trying to access the people that are already in the industry, and just finding out as much as you can about the industry. And again, that's what I love about these podcasts and speaking to people like me that work in the industry. We're not sugarcoating anything. There's really great parts about it, just like any career, any job, and there's not so great parts about it as well. Just to make sure you go in eyes wide open to the not so good parts of what you're going to be dealing with. And because in my, well, really, you look at everyone on the aeroplane, the pilots, the flight attendants, and me engineering the aircraft. Where most airports these days are 24 hours, 7 days a week, every day of the year. So that means shift work. So you're going to be doing shift work of some sort of nature. So that means being at work sometimes on your birthday, at Christmas time, at Easter, being at when all your friends and family are getting together or going out and having fun, you're going to be working. So that's a real thing that you need to consider. I wouldn't say don't let it put you off, because there are real benefits of shift work as well. It's like anything, there's pluses and minuses. But if you really value your Monday to Friday 9 to 5 working arrangement, then aviation, in any piloting, flight attendant or engineering, and a lot of the roles in aviation are going to be a real struggle for you. So that would probably be my tip, is just explore whatever avenue it is. That you might find it's not what you thought it was, but you might be able to pivot into something else. But access the information, the people, and then when you've narrowed down, when you're quite sure what it is you want to do, then start trying to get the skills, even if it doesn't mean enrolling in an apprenticeship or being engaged full time in work or in the aviation. Is think laterally. Think like there's men's sheds and things like this now. You might live in an apartment, or mum and dad might not have a shed full of tools, but there's other places you can go that you can approach to try and start getting your hands on tools if you were wanting to be a licensed aircraft maintenance engineer like myself.
Brilliant. Scott, that's been a fantastic whistle-stop tour of a long career. You've covered so many areas of the maintenance aspect and your journey through it. And I think my key takeaway is that story you told right at the beginning about having the courage to knock on a door at Qantas jet base and say, "Hey, how do I become an apprentice engineer?" I think that advice, is ironically, I think probably more valuable today than it was even then, because the digital stuff is all very good and everyone can apply online, but it's also, as you said, hard to differentiate yourself from a sea of other people. And as you say, a human being might not even look at your application because it's done by AI or some kind of some kind of process. So getting and seeing people face to face in the industry, knocking on a door, coming through work experience or any kind of sort of outreach where organisations, employers like Qantas and others, have open days. It's a great opportunity to get out there, press the flesh, and touch the thing before you apply. So, thank you so much for your time, Scott. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and thanks for appearing on the Sky Careers podcast.
You're welcome, Mark, and thanks for the opportunity. It's been great to share my career and the highlights and the not so highlights. And yeah, if you are interested in doing a part 2 where we could take a deeper dive, then I would love to do that.
Cheers, my friend. Speak to you soon.
Will do. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers,
bye-bye.
Scott. Thanks for listening to the Sky Careers podcast. If today's conversation has sparked your interest in aviation, then head over to our website at skycareers.com.au. Whether you dream of flying aircraft or you're curious about the hundreds of other exciting roles that keep the aviation industry moving, Sky Careers is your gateway to discovering these opportunities. And if you are already in the industry, check out Sky Careers Connect and Sky Careers Leadership and consider joining our online learning community. Until next time, keep reaching for the skies.